a spirit of reconciliation, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the homeland of the many diverse First Nations and Métis people who have walked this land since time immemorial. We are grateful to work, live, and learn on the traditional territory of Treaty 8. And with that, we will go to the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion on that? Or is there any additions that go on to it first, I should ask?
I'll move this percent.
Okay, so I've got the motion. Is there any additions? All right, seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. And thanks for everyone for coming out. It's great to see lots of people at our meetings. And we have some scheduled delegations. And we can start with the Youth Assessment Center, AUPE. You're welcome to come on up. We have a mic there. And when you hit the button, it'll turn red, and then everybody will be able to hear you. Maybe you can just start with your name and sort of brief indication of what you're here for, and then you got up to 15 minutes.
Perfect, thank you.
So you're up.
You just gotta get the mic.
Oh, I was waiting for the red light.
Oh, yeah, it'll be there.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Mayor Panasiuk and council members. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Sandra Azokar, and I am one of the vice presidents for the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees assigned to the beautiful Northwest area. Just to put this presentation into context for you, for the last 2 decades, I also worked as a child intervention worker at the crisis unit. And what we do there is we coordinate emergency response after hours that require child welfare intervention. So I'm very familiar with the need for such a center as the Youth Assessment Center in High Prairie. We deal with all of Northwest, and that's one of the centers that we could access after hours if needed. Today I am joined by Nathan and Sandra Marquardt, who are both from members of Local 6 Chapter 12, as well as other members of Chapter 12, which is the High Prairie Slave Lake area. And they represent social workers, child intervention workers, age workers, persons with disability workers, family support with children with disability workers, and of course members of the facility-based care, the High Prairie Youth Emergency Shelter, Youth Assessment Center. First, I wanted to start out by clearing up a little bit about the confusion over what is happening to the High Prairie Campus-Based Treatment Center. The government, our employer, has been sending out mixed messages. It has told AUP, which represents workers at the facility, that it will not reopen for, in quotes, the foreseeable future. That literally means that they cannot see a future where it is open. The members that were employed there, where some of them were terminated, and some of them were forced to look at relocation and to take other jobs. Some of them were fortunate to have the opportunity to remain in the community, but a lot of them are looking into relocating to other places in the province. The impression that it has given to the workers at the facility is that it is closed and they're not getting their jobs back. That's simply where we're at. Meanwhile, the government is telling the community and sometimes in the media that the future of the center is being studied and that it will remain closed until the study is completed, which is sometime in August. The building closed after a fire, as probably all know, in November, and I think it begets the question: why is it taking 9 months to study whether the building can be refurbished? We know that the building needed to have some TLC loving care there, and that it needed some upgrades, but definitely we needed to get a response from them sooner than 9 months as to whether or not it would be feasible for them to invest money in reopening a much needed service. There's no reason to study whether the center is needed it always has been it has always been needed, and that situation hasn't changed. We certainly aren't seeing fewer youth needing help, but we did see over the years, so it's a stop to accessing this service while kids were taken to the city of Edmonton and ended up sleeping on cots and inflatable beds at the crisis unit where I used to work. So we know that the need is there, and this center serves all of the north here. And so taking these kids out of was unnecessary. The shortage of spaces means that AUP workers are already having to drive youth in need of urgent care in a safe place hours away from their community, from their home community. Sometimes they have to get by with a couch, like I mentioned, for a night or two. Sometimes they're taken to homeless shelters. These are the kinds of places where treatment can be provided. Most definitely not for the youth that make use of this facility. And we think that it's time for the government to come clean with the people of High Prairie about its true intentions. High Prairie needs a campus-based treatment center. It needs a center to reopen. The youths with behavioral issues who need the kind of treatment that can only be found in these facilities are now faced with being moved hundreds of kilometers away from their homes, their family, their communities, and their only support systems. Their families are now faced with the impossible decision to send their children hundreds of kilometers away from their own, from themselves for treatment, or to give up their life in the High Prairie area and move to be closer to their kids. Treatment is now being offered in Edmonton, which is, as you know, at least 307 flights away, nearly 4 hours by car, depending on which road you take, because I took a really long one today, or Lethbridge, which is 870 clicks, or 8.5 hours by car, or the center at Lac-La-Biche, 340 kilometers, 3.5 hours at least, by car. And we know that it was supposed to be open in June. That one also was impacted by fire, but we're not sure if that's going to be the case anymore, if that center is going to be open by June. So again, these kids have no other option but to go to Edmonton or to Lethbridge to get the treatment they need. So we need to think, I would invite you to think about these youth that are in need of campus-based treatment. These are children with serious behavioral issues. These are children that other agencies will simply not accept. Without treatment, many of these children will end up living on the streets where they will be exposed to hard drugs and a high-risk lifestyle. In an era where soaring drug-related deaths, their lives are put at risk, and if these youths don't get the treatment they need. Alberta Child and Youth Advocate recently reported the death of 68 young people and serious injury to 15 others between April 2023 and March 31st, 2024. The youths in these treatment facilities risk becoming another of these fatality statistics. Youths that are sent hundreds of kilometers away from home are likely to abscond and end up homeless, or too often part of the judicial system. The services that were provided at the High Prairie Center was vital, and it worked. There's no reason that the government can't either reopen the existing facility, build a new one, or find a temporary location. Instead, the government has chosen to delay and to mislead the people of High Prairie. But it's not just the youth and their families who are being hurt, it is the community of High Prairie and the surrounding area. When fully staffed, the facility would employ more than 30 people full-time. Those jobs are gone, and so are highly skilled people who did them. When a child came into care, for example, part of the intake process was to provide a medical and a dental intake, and that made use of those professionals here in town. They also bought food and relied heavily on the economy of the town to keep the place going. So if the center isn't reopened, that means that the permanent loss of those jobs, the current workers and their families have either lost their jobs permanently or have been forced to leave the community, as I mentioned at the beginning. If the center isn't reopened, that's dozens of workers and their incomes gone. That's compounded by the loss of the incomes from their family members if they are forced to leave High Prairie. That's a significant economic hit to the community, particular to local businesses and small businesses. The last few years have been hard on local businesses, and they cannot afford to take another hit. This is just another reason why we continue to have an uptick in urbanization in this province and not enough young people staying in their communities. So today we're asking that for the sake of the vulnerable youth who need help, for the sake of their families, for the sake of local businesses, and for the sake of this community, that we urge you to continue to put pressure on the government and assist us in having this center reopen now. With that, I don't know if there's any questions.
No, thank you for that. It is a major employer, and like you say, I know, my wife used to work there, and I know it's a needed facility in our region. So, I'll open it up if there was any questions.
Did you have, sorry, Senator, did you have any ideas or thought about what kind of pressure we could do? Is it a letter? Is it just lobbying with government officials? What are your thoughts?
I think both. We have been pushing as much as we can by writing letters as well. But I think in a lot of ways, the employer, the government would listen to municipal governments, not only because of the need and the services that this center provided, not only to the High Prairie area, but to the rest of the north, that they would take, they would probably hopefully hear what your recommendations are as well, both from a financial standpoint of view and from a service standpoint of view, right? Because we need to collaborate and make sure that the kids in this area are going to be getting the services that they need. So both, if you could do that on the children's and the workers' behalf and the community's behalf, it would be very much appreciated.
I have a second question. Do you guys have, or have you developed a template or an information sheet that would speak clearly to what the services were and sort of an idea of how many children or youth are impacted? I know in my experience that there are youth that are impacted daily, but if we had better, like if we had a statement from somebody that was working there, that would be awesome. Like if you could give us some information.
We can certainly look into that and provide you with that information and an infographic or hopefully some information that can be shared within the community as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for that idea.
So Rebecca,
Just out of curiosity, what was the capacity at that center at any given time?
It can hold up to 30 children.
Up to licensed for 16.
Licensed for,
Accredited for 16, licensed for 12, I think, technically.
okay. Yeah, so licensed for 16, accredited for 12. Do you want to?
And I think the average was about 36 kids a year that went through there.
And my second question to that is, do you know what the damages were from the fire? Like, is it severe? Is it marginal to reopening, or do you have any idea?
We've actually just heard from people that actually were at the center itself, and they did indicate, but they have to do a formal review of the safety issue. So it's all speculation and hearsay at this point, but it impacted one area of the center, not necessarily the other, but for safety purposes, they obviously would have had to close it. But again, we have no idea if that's correct, right?
Yeah, we've heard, I think, 3 different versions over the last 6 months as to what happened and what part of the building and stuff. So.
All we know is that there hasn't been any work being done there. Initially, there was just closure of the center, but there hasn't been any contractors out to the site or any type of work being done. And just so that with the question question that Nathan was able to answer in respect to the usage of that center. Again, the concern that we have is that sometimes those centers are underutilized and understaffed and under-resourced for a purpose, right? And it always begets that question as to why. Because we see a serious lack of placement for children that have high behavioral issues happening. And so trying to understand the reasoning behind why when we have a center that's being underutilized and understaffed, it's always been a huge concern in our system, right? And it becomes a systemic issue. Because technically that center could provide a lot more, but over the years what we have seen is a dwindling of the numbers of the children that get admitted, and it goes back to not having enough staff to provide the services that they need.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Well, thank you very much for that, and I can say that we have already put out and lobbied already a little bit, but we can certainly, I think, look at doing some more and working some more with the minister and our MLA to see what we can have happen there.
Thank you so much. Any help will be appreciated, and thank you so much for allowing us to come and present today. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
All right, thanks for that. And our next scheduled delegation, Savannah Wood.
Hello, my name is Savannah Ward.
Oh, sorry.
That's all good. Good evening to all you good folks. So my idea or my goal of this meeting is for a community garden. Just with the rising costs of like just everything, I can say the economy, taxes, and go down the line, but that take forever. So just for a community garden where okay, sorry, I get all anxious when I get all taxes. So anyway, so with the rising costs, it's I want to help people. So take time to grow a garden, and at the end of it, chop it up to make mixed vegetables so people could freeze it. Plant some plum trees, fruit trees, strawberry plants, blueberry plants, rhubarb, stuff that doesn't take that much tending or care around town, so that when we get the harvest, we can give it to families or just people that are going to need it. That's generally my idea or my goal. But a plot of ground would be needed and permission to plant things in JC Park area or wherever you guys see fit. But I already got the tools. Like I worked out that I can water it with my water tank and my hoses that I've already have, because I do a big garden at my dad's place and my mom's. So just a plot of land to plant actual garden, strawberries, blueberries, asparagus, Saskatoon trees, cherry trees, that different things around town. And if there's any empty lots, I guess. That's as far as I got with that. And I rambled.
You did great. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a very noble cause.
Oh, thank you. But if there's any empty lots or anything available, or if we can start planting things in JC Park, just because there's a lot of space, a lot of people go walking there, a lot of sunlight, open space for stuff to plant.
Yeah, and I'm just off the top of my head, I know a lot of things might get vandalized there too. That would be my concern out there, because in JC Park, lots of our stuff gets.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
figured with the high crime, there's probably somebody that's gonna probably bring that up as well. But just redo it, I guess. I don't know. They will get I don't know, maybe they'll find Jesus, I don't know, hopefully they do, but you know, I'm able to rebuild it if I, you know. I will rebuild it if I have to, you know, I got some community members that will actually help me out. There's somebody that will plow the land, so we don't have to look for donations for lumber or such things like that. So I have been talking to people in communities about it. And, vandalism was one of the things that came up in my brain too, but it helps more people than that person, I guess.
All right, questions or comments from
It's
anyone?
not only vandalism, but we have a lot of deer in town also.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know about those critters too. I had some theories about the deer too. I work over at Marigold and there's one lady who do the bird feeders, so they always eat the bird feeders, so. Yeah, anything like that, yeah.
Deer also taste very good.
That's true, I offered to come bring it inside, warm it up in the oven, but she didn't want to.
How much space do you need?
Doesn't really matter, I guess I was just looking for just as much as you would give me, it doesn't really matter, as much people as I can help. I do really big gardens for my dad, so I don't know, and my mom, so. Not that much space overall, like a good sized garden. I know the one by Foss, like that guy that always does it on the highway, he has a decent sized garden and he actually helps, like, gets a lot of produce out there, there's a lot of people that stop in there.
So there's different models of community garden. I know in Vancouver, like you can buy, like it's a huge lot, but you buy a plot, like you rent a plot. So would you have it as separate people would have different plots or just one huge?
I was thinking of one huge garden, but then I also got a lot of questions about that, because they didn't have the space, talked to people in Aspen Courts, they love a garden, but they don't have the space. So I wasn't too sure, and I guess it would depend on how many people would help me out with it.
Right.
Yeah, like the global, yeah. I wouldn't want to delegate it to be like, well, whoever wants this, and you miss out on the people that, you know, would help for a community garden, as like I said. Right, so.
Councillor Shishin.
So some of it would probably, it sounds like you're thinking on the lines of perennials, so the berries and such would, I kind of picture it from what you're saying is, that would be on one side, and that would be year after year. And then you would have the individual, like you're saying, garden plots.
Yeah.
So you need the space, I'm thinking space-wise, and that's the question of space. Yeah, you kind of want enough room for that, and then have your stuff, that's how you envision it.
Yeah, like JC Park, maybe walking around the trails or something, where you guys have the flower beds and stuff, maybe have like a little berry snack to keep you going. Or like, you know, whatever it might be. And then just whatever at the end of the harvest collected, you can pickle whatever you can freeze whatever you can whatever after that, whatever the harvest would be. But it would be like a garden plot and edibles around JC Park. Okay, yeah.
Councillor Martins.
So Shavana, am I saying
Yes.
that correctly? Well, pleasure to meet you. Thank you for coming in. I love your idea. I'm just so excited and I applaud you for your passion and community spirit. You did great, by the way. I didn't notice an ounce of nervousness. So this idea is fantastic. I've looked in many communities where there are community gardens and I guess I'm interested in the rules around it, right? Does, even if you didn't charge, do people weed their own little section, or would you be responsible for all of that? How do we go about this? I mean,
Well, that would also depend on, you guys kind of have the same, it would depend if you're renting your own garden, I guess that's on you, because it's technically yours. But if it's like a community one, I think we'd all just, you know, get together and chat or whatever. it is.
yeah, no, I love it. And that was my next question. Did you have people already in mind that said, look, I'd like to manage my own little, raised bed or whatever it is?
I only actually had one person. Like, there were 6 people that came up to me and were like, oh, I totally helped with this idea. Awesome, great job. They were more of the collective standpoint, whereas the one person from the apartment, like I said that they want a garden, but they don't have the group. So that was more of a, I want, whereas the other ones were a collective, I'll totally help with the ideas. So I guess it would depend on if they're renting, I wouldn't really do the renting the plot, but there's probably people out there.
Yeah, no, so I love
It'd be an option.
love the food forest concept. I wish all of our yards were edible, you know?
Yeah, right? Like,
So how does one get a hold of you, Shana? I know your name, but how do you know
I can leave my,
Okay.
yeah,
contact info?
yeah, I can leave my contact info. I am on Facebook. I'm part of the High discussion. I did put a post out there, so.
A lot
Yeah.
of feedback, a lot of likes.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of feedback from a lot of like,
I don't know, maybe the rest of council can weigh in, but I think that this idea has come up here in Highbury before, but I'm not sure.
I've actually heard it has. It came up about apparently somebody tried it 16 years ago. I've also heard of the Children's Resource Center doing it a couple years back. I just moved back to Highbury, so within the last couple of years from my accident. So, yeah.
Welcome back, and I'd love to hear more.
Oh, well, thank you for kind.
Anything else? No, okay, well, it's a very interesting idea, and like I say, I think it has some merit, and we'll probably, we'll leave it with our CEO, maybe to come up with some ideas on where else we might be able to put it, or some options on what could work, and then we can get back to you and go from there.
Yeah, for sure. I'll have to leave my number though. I got a kiddo waiting at home, so.
Sure. That would be
I will leave my.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's good.
if you would, Haley, that would be
All
great.
right. Thank you kindly. Have yourselves a good night. Thank you for hearing with me.
Thank
Talking
you.
with me.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
coming.
coming.
All right, we'll move on then to our public delegations, if anybody would like to come up and speak. We lost everybody after. Okay, so no public delegations. All right, then we'll move on to our peace officers report. And can I get a motion on this one? Councilor Nishishin.
I move that council receives the senior peace officers March 2024 report for information.
All right, thank you. And I'll turn it over to
Good evening, Mayor, Councilor. That month, March, issuing more dog license renewal tickets. We're down to 11 now. Picked up one stray, released back to its owner. And we've started with the unsightly inspections and issuing cleanup notices. And as far as still issuing parking warnings at certain locations and ticketing repeat offenders there. So, open to any questions council might have.
All right. Questions? Councilor Tanaka.
So, for March, municipal warnings issued were 10. That's above the 11 for the animal control, that's separate?
That's correct, yeah.
And what were those for, just out of curiosity?
Some would have been, loitering,
Okay,
panhandling, that type.
okay. All right. I see we have a new fellow, the new guy, unfortunately I didn't catch your name when I came in.
Joel?
Joel,
Yeah, Joel Mosa.
thank you.
He's a trained CPO. We're just waiting on the Solgen to by his appointment. So once he gets his appointment, he will be, what is it, more active, I guess, so to speak.
Alright,
Right now, he's just,
tagging along.
and I'm showing him the highlights and,
Alright, okay. So I don't know if this is a discussion for this or a separate discussion, but is there a way that we can get more patrol hours in town?
obviously, there's gonna be more once Joel gets his appointment.
True, but we don't know how long that's gonna take.
Yeah, it'll be, I submitted it 2 weeks ago, so it should be here.
Well, I'm hoping once we get Joel in the system and starting that, the extra hours will draw some more eyes and ears out in there because, I'm sorry, it's getting scary out there to what some of the crime that's going on and stuff and yeah, we need to figure out something on how to help address this increase at the moment. I don't know if because it's spring now, we'll have an uptake and then it'll taper off. I don't know, but right now it's like, it's scary out there as to what's going on and what's happening, because I mean, from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is like people are just running amok with going on people's properties, taking whatever. It doesn't matter if you have motion lights, they're just helping themselves, breaking locks on sheds, breaking fuel tanks from vehicles that are parked in somebody's driveway and siphoning their gas. Like, I mean, like, it's gonna become a vigilante here pretty soon because people are getting really, really frustrated. And I can understand that their frustration is slowly kicking up. And if there's some way that we can find a way to address some of this stuff, then it's something we really, really need to look at.
We will be doing the best to our authorities grant us. But
And I understand that as a peace officer, you don't have the same authority as
like you said,
an RCMP.
we can do our patrols, we can do the eyes, and we can do the listing and relay that to the RCMP. But, yeah,
And I mean, and you can't be every place
exactly, because
at once, and I understand that. It's just trying to find that balance. And this is not any criticism towards you or Joel when he comes on. It's just the nature of the beast right now.
and then I expand onto the judicial system.
Then that's true too. I completely agree with you.
We'll do our best.
All right, anything else? Well, thank you for your report and welcome aboard.
You,
We had a motion to receive the report for information. All in favor? Carried. Moving on then to our minutes. Get a motion on our April 4th minutes.
The council approves the minutes from the April 4th, 2024 special meeting of the council as presented.
Okay, did anybody pick up? Oh, Councilor Daneka.
Again, meeting called to order at 6:08 by who? There's all the other minutes saying Mayor Pedasic, Deputy Mayor.
so we've got the one amendment to make. Anything else? Any other errors or omissions? If you'd like to amend your motion with the one change,
As amended.
all right. All in favor? Carried. Moving on then to our April 9th minutes. Motion on these ones. Councilor Waco.
I'll move we accept the April 9th minutes as presented.
All right. Any errors or omissions on these? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Moving on to the April 13th minutes. Motion on these ones. Quiet at the front here. Councilor Denoka.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 13th special meeting as presented.
All right, any errors, omissions in these minutes? All right, all in favor? Carried. And moving on to the April 13th ones. Committee of the Whole minutes. Councilor Ishish.
The council approved the minutes from the April 13th, 2024 committee of the whole as presented.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Stenhouse.
So it says the meeting was called to order at 7:25 PM. At the top, it says the committee of the whole was at 9:15, sorry, at 9:25 PM.
We had the special meeting right before, so it took a little bit longer. So
No,
it's
but
just,
it's AM, PM.
oh, sorry, I'm not seeing where you're saying 7.
Sorry?
You said 7?
Yeah, I didn't mean to say 7.
Okay,
I meant to
Just
say
the PM then.
Okay, anything else on these minutes? So we have the one addition, would you want to,
As amended.
as amended, all in favor? Carried. And the last one's April 16th. Motion on these? Councilor Dunn.
The council approved the minutes from the April 16th, 2024 special meeting of council as presented.
Okay, anything on these minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Moving on then to business arising, which was the community garage sale. The motion on this one? Councilor Dunn.
The council direct administration to host a community garage sale at the fees indicated above in support of participating in this event.
All right, and I see Ramona's come up, you must want to speak on this item.
No, I'm just looking for your direction either way.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Councilor Stenhouse.
So the background information says that the town had already planned on having a garage sale.
I had made a poster and I was going to present it to Bill and see what he thought about it, but then we got the Elks letter, so it was just very coincidental timing.
Okay, thanks.
My question, I'm just wondering, like the Elks want to see it done, are they willing to help with doing some of this? It just seems like it went from the Elks wanting it and then us doing it. Is there a way to work together with them on this? Do we know? Councilor Waco?
The way I understood the whole request was they wanted the whole town to have a garage sale, right? Like, everybody,
Yeah.
you know, bring out your deck and we'll see who's gonna who live in a really poor area of town when it comes to traffic. And, you know, we won't mention any names, but their initials are James Michael. Like I get 20 kids for Halloween because there's 2 doors that face my street. I'm not gonna get any traffic. So for people like myself and others, and seniors perhaps, or apartment people who aren't necessarily gonna have the space to do a garage sale, having it at the Sports Palace. I assume it'd be in the Sports Palace and not the others.
Yeah, we would have it in the sports house. It also offers a dry, for sure, dry area for
Yeah.
people.
And this is, I mean, this could be an annual thing, just, you know, first weekend of June, have this massive community garage sale, and people will come to town for this if we advertise this well in surrounding communities, so. Yeah, this was their idea, was for everybody to sort of have it on that day, but then would we be willing to use one of our facilities to host an indoor portion of it, is the way I understood it.
Councillor Dunn?
Given her last paragraph, they're not looking for time and money. So in my thinking, that means that they are intending to run the event. But we can clarify. So,
Yeah, that was mine, is just how can we work together? Or, you know, what do they want to see as involvement in this? And, I mean, for me, I'm very, I agree, is I don't have any problems with seeing the use of our facility and whether you know, there's a charge or if there's no charge. I don't think it's gonna make a big difference financially at the end of the day. You know, it might mean, you know, $400 or $500 to the town for that day, but for a good purpose, I'd be willing to waive those fees. And that's my view of it.
yeah, and a partnership that, I mean, the Royal Purple and the Oaks have been supportive to the community for a number, going back, way back. So,
Well, didn't Neox originally build the Sports Palace?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure that was when Brian was 30 that they built that.
Okay, Councillor Daneka?
I remember, and this was years ago, there was a community garage sale at the Sports Palace. There was, I don't know how many people, 40 some tables. There were people selling some larger stuff outside. It was a fairly big event. So, I mean, if we can facilitate something similar to that, at no charge to the sellers to have a table, that would be my preference.
Councillor Stenhouse?
So unfortunately, the Royal Purple beat us out of the starting gate. I would like to see that we reach out to Royal Purple and they take the lead and see what they want, instead of us taking over from their. I know you said you had an idea, but they come to us first. So if we could just ask them what they're looking for and if they would like that, as long as we don't steal their thunder. They're the ones who come forward with it.
Yeah, for sure, we can just partner up with them, that's what I was thinking. I thought it was perfect timing to get with inquiry for others.
Councillor Winkle?
I don't see this as stealing your thunder. I see this as facilitating their event. As you know, people in apartment buildings or people who live on the outskirts of town. You know, this just facilitates it. This just makes it a bigger event. It's not, you know, sure. I mean, on our garage sale here, we could say regional community garage sale. We could throw the Royal Purple, the Elks on there if they're okay with that. We'd have to ask them, of course, it's their logos. This isn't stealing their thunder. This is adding to it. This is putting the boom in the thunder.
I'm sure Councillor Stenhouse can speak for herself, but I didn't hear that we're, like, she used the word stealing their thunder, because we need to be partners that come alongside and say, you guys have the idea, we will be there to support and assist you. So it's not us doing it, it's the Royal Purple, and I believe that this is a fundraiser for the Royal Purple. And it's not, they're doing it for the good of the community, but it also is just making sure that they cover their costs and stuff. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I could, we could say, you know, as a council that we would donate the use of the facility for that day. And that would include some of the manpower to set up the tables and, you know, the chairs, put those up. And then let's see if the Royal Purple are willing to run the event, and they can decide if they want to charge or not charge. If it's a, I don't know if they are looking at charging a fee, or they just want to have an event to bring people into town, or, you know, is it a money maker? Because I don't think they're gonna make tons of money at $10 a table, but maybe enough.
That was just a number that I came up with. That is, they didn't ask me to put a number there at all. They didn't even know I had a poster made, so.
So, yeah, I kind of like that idea to say, yep, we would offer this up for that day and see if they would like to run it. And if they don't, then we could look at, as a town, you know, running it and using them to help promote it perhaps.
And through the chair, what I would suggest in terms of doing the bookkeeping stuff, that we don't lose track of the grant was actually given to this organization, that it be reflected as coming out of the community grants account for whatever. If it's $400 for the tables, and that's the town's contribution, and then leave it up to them whether they want to utilize the facility or not on that day.
What is our rate for, in the summer for the facility if we were to rent it out? That would be our contribution. You know,
It's $105 an hour unless it's over 24 hours, and then it's
$105 an hour. This would be
8 hours.
8 hours roughly, or 10 for time for setup and takedown. So, you know, it's $1,000 donation kind of thing, right? A little bit more than 1,000, but. Yeah. All right, any other thoughts on this, Councillor Shishin?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the letter itself, and it's, yeah, it's saying space and tables, and, you know, I think it's just safety because of the weather, you never know. But I think it's a great community and area event. You know, I know when we used to have the cleanup that was in front of Buchanan Center. Well, people brought stuff, but sometimes people took stuff, and, you know, so that is out there, you know, and I know a lot of people ask about that, and, yeah, what a great thing for people in the apartments, and I think it's a great thing for the community to be able to do that. And I think it would really pick up, you know, I don't see it just happening once, I see it probably happening again, so.
Councillor Daneka?
Yeah, if we can contact the Royal Purple and ask them, so what was your envision, would it work if we donated the space at the Sports Palace with some tables, would you be willing to take the lead on organizing it and see what they say before we say, yeah, we're gonna do this?
Okay, I think one of the things that we could do today is to say that we would make the donation of the facility as a council, and then we could work out the details of, you know, who is gonna run it, if they're gonna run it, would they charge, that kind of thing, that's up to them.
I see they say at the end, like they're looking for a letter of intention, right, so.
Yeah, and that would be our commitment, would be the space. John, your motion, what was your motion, just?
Sorry, I went back and read it.
Yeah.
That council direct the administration to the to host the community garage sale at the fees indicated above and support and participating in this.
Okay, so we're kind of veering off of your motion a little bit, but,
Yeah.
I don't know if, is that where we wanted to go, was make a motion to, donate the facility and then contact, Royal Purple to see if they want to host it, and they can decide if they want to charge, is that? And if they don't, we do somewhere else, okay. So with that, John, do you want to amend your motion?
Can we also add in there that we send a letter of intent so they're aware?
Absolutely, yeah, or we can contact, okay.
So I will make a motion that administration connect with Royal Purple and let them know of our intent to support this event and to provide, that we would provide the facility should they want to.
Now, one of the things, because it's coming out of our grants and sponsorship dollars, we would have to make that motion and see who would support it. Because it's roughly, say, $1,100 to do that.
Okay.
And then who would support it, because it's a joint use and the county, it's ourselves covering those costs, not a joint with the county, so it would have to be our council covering those costs.
And that cost be covered by, so you have the original? And that cost be covered by town council as per councilors that are willing to put into that amount.
Okay. So perhaps we can just get an indication of who's interested in contributing towards that $1,000. I'm interested, so Sasha, Judy's a no, Sasha.
This is the same we last month this time.
Hey, can you speak up, please? We can't hear you.
Sorry, I was just wondering what the allocation, I thought we had less of an allocation this year.
That's correct. Council reduced it by $5,000, but again, this account's been underspent every year for the last few years.
And I was just gonna say, and it's renewed, so we're not going back to 2023.
So we're contributing to the Royal Purple or just the town, just the rental?
We're contributing free rent to them to run it, and if they're not going to, then we would look at hosting it, I think, ourselves as a town, but.
Yeah.
Either way, we'd have to pay for some of that. So, we've got, 5 on board, 1 no, your vote, would you use your yes, okay. So did you catch that, Bailey? 6 yeses, 1 no? Okay, everybody understand what we're voting on? All in favor? Carried. All right, moving on then. 2, water restrictions, 8.1. This will be an interesting one. I get a motion on this one to start us off. Councilor Royko.
I'll move that council approve the water restriction measures and triggers in principle and direct administration to prepare the necessary bylaw amendments. And it would be just poetic if during this presentation, it started to freaking rain.
It doesn't look like that's gonna happen, so. Perhaps I'll turn it over to either Vern or Bill to give us a little bit on this, and then we'll continue it on.
Okay, due to the overall drought within the province, I know council was concerned about levels of the reservoir that we have right now. We sat down with our operators and talked about the issues at hand. a scenario for you guys, council to consider. At this time, we're at about 22 feet in the reservoir. Another 3 weeks of pumping in the river and we will be completely full. Council did be proactive a couple of years ago and purchased a low flow pump that will be able to draw water from the river under lower flows, whereas the high flow pump cannot draw at that lower levels to refill the reservoir. It only pumps at about 400 to 500 gallons a minute, so it would only fill the reservoir part-time, but we wouldn't be losing during the day because we pull it in from the reservoir at about 400 gallons a minute. The plant produces.
Say that again, sorry, I'm just, we're pulling, we use about 400 gallons a minute.
Yeah,
And we'll just,
and the smaller pump would only be able to add water to the reservoir during the time that the plant is not running. Otherwise, it's just gonna maintain.
yeah. Well, even maintaining, that's good, but it's about even what we use and what that one can supply, is that?
Yeah, but it only runs, the plant will only run between 12 and 14 hours a day. So there will be 8 hours a day, maybe 6 hours a day, depending on the usage in town, that pump will continue to add water to the reservoir.
So even with the low flow pump, we'd be getting ahead.
Yeah, as long as there is sufficient flow in the river to allow that for the low flow pump. The design of the low flow pump draws from the bottom of the cage that's there. The other one is a horizontal, which is about, the top of it would be about 2.5 feet off the bottom. So we can still fill somewhat, but at least maintain what is already there.
Have we had a situation where the river's been low enough that the low flow pump could not pump?
We haven't had an opportunity to do that,
Right, yeah.
because the river was fine last year, right?
Okay.
And we did top off the reservoir and finished topping off it in November of last year. And we were only down 5.5 feet when we started pumping in early April, as soon as the river broke.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything more before we, okay, well, I'll open it up, there's lots of questions, Councilor Martins first. Yeah.
Hi, Brent, thank you for that.
Oh, sorry.
Could I offer just a bit more information? Our current water utility bylaw does not have any prescriptive water restriction measures. So part of what's being brought forward to council today is saying if you want to put in prescriptive measures and you want them to be enforceable, you will have to incorporate them into the bylaw. There's nothing in the bylaw that allows us to enforce these measures currently. So that's the second part of the report where we talk about amendments to the bylaw that would be required. And the amendments to the bylaw are based on basically the level of the water reservoir. So right now, we're in fairly good shape, unlike other communities that aren't in good a shape. So 80% of the water in Alberta is produced and flows from the north, but southern Alberta uses 80% of the supply per se. So that's the challenge. How is this going to be balanced provincially? So in addition to that, we will continue to advocate through our newsletters and other measures, some operational choices individual ratepayers can make at their own homes to reduce water flows. In addition to that, I know that council has suggested that certain activities the town normally does, such as flower baskets and the like, should be ceased. So we'd like to get some input on that because we have some contracts out. We also are getting requests from other organizations such as the Beautification Committee to start maintaining and pruning the flower beds that they use. But if council is going to direct implement certain measures already. We'll have to enhance our communication to other community groups in town. So administration is not suggesting that. We're suggesting that council go with the model that's being presented and implement measures in terms of conservation if necessary, based on the schedules we produced and are before you today. So right now, and as the Public Works Superintendent has indicated, we have roughly 12 months of supply as we remeasure, and that will be up to hopefully 14 months by mid-May. So that's a significant window of opportunity, and it's probably the highest level for the last dozen years, given the current timing of the fiscal calendar year. So that's it in a nutshell. So regardless of whether council directs to implement the measures sooner than administration's recommending, that's the direction we want to get from council, because we need to communicate additional opportunities for the ratepayers and for others. But you can see as measures are implicated or implemented based on metrics, there will be significant impacts in the community. So it's an issue of, given where we are, how fast does council we want to go? I'll give you some hypotheticals. We've already reduced the number of hanging baskets in town by 50%. And the water that we use is roughly 70 cubes for the season. And if you look at the total picture, 70 cubes isn't going to make or break water restrictions in the town. Similarly, put things in perspective, it's always good to talk about realities. If you look at our bulk water station, we produce roughly and sell roughly 20,000 cubes a year from our bulk waste stations, in that range. So those type of things, they may look like they're have big impacts, but they're not. It's really getting industry and the ratepayers to reduce their intakes. And we will be providing monthly reports to council saying, here's what we produced historically, here's what we're seeing happen this current year. And that will help inform council of how fast and furious they want to potentially influence these charts and the trigger and the trigger measures based on the metrics. But it's really a council decision how fast you want to go on it.
Good? Yep. Okay, Councilor Martins.
So Vern, my question was, what did you say the current level is sitting at the reservoir?
22 feet.
Okay, that's what I had. And so what does it take to be full?
Well, of course, with that, it's 25 feet. We can do a little bit of freeboard above that. That is not recommended to do, but in a situation that it's long-term drought, we would probably bring that up to 25.5 feet.
And that's the 14 months of supply?
Yes.
Okay, and
Also, as indicated, at 4 feet, we're saying we're at 0. We could go out there and have a diver go in and take our intake and cut it off to 2 feet, which would give us another 2 feet of supply in the main reservoir, because the intake suction is 4 feet off the bottom.
okay, thank you for that. What about those plans that we talked about shoring up the reservoir? Is that happening this year
We have started the process, yes.
and to be completed?
We're not sure what the timeline is on that. We just got approval here a week ago, or a little over a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, to start the process to get everything done.
And through the chair, that would not add additional capacity, that's just to maintain
The condition of the berm.
the integrity of the berm.
Thank you, Brian.
Councilor Daneka.
I guess I'm looking at this from a point of, just because we have the water, we're okay. So we can still have hanging baskets and we can still have beautification or whatever. But just because where okay doesn't, in my mind, doesn't necessarily mean that gives us free rein to use past practices. So again, I would, at this point, I would like to not have any hanging baskets. And, I mean, this water restriction measures, this whole thing is beyond us here. This is truly an open house, town hall, to get people to understand the potential we're facing, as opposed to putting it on the website, putting it on the Facebook page, putting it in the paper. This is a true town hall meeting to explain what what we could potentially be facing if this drought is prolonged. And this is the metrics that we've set aside, and this is where we're at. Yes, we're good, but if this happens, if A, B, C happens, this is what's going to happen water-wise. And people need to be fully aware of the potential, and may not happen, but people need to be fully aware of the potential that it could be implemented. And they need to be made aware of that in an open house, so they can ask their questions and it can be explained properly, as opposed to them reading a chart saying, okay, so county co-ops, if we're at stage 5, the county co-ops get no water. Is that my understanding by your chart here?
That's what was proposed, yes.
That is what's proposed.
And that was to ensure that the residents of High Prairie
Yes.
had water, and that the emergency services, like the hospital and educational institutions, do have water.
Right. Again, like I said, this truly needs to be a town hall, so people are aware of the measures we've taken in case we get to a point where there are water restrictions.
Councillor Stenos?
So I'm gonna be the bearer of bad news. I won't be supporting this tonight. According to your chart, at stage 2, you will not be allowed to water your livestock, yet we will continue to keep the car washes and the pools and splash parks open.
Yeah. The watering of livestock, they have the options to haul water to their livestock.
But they're getting it from our bulk water.
Well, some of the county users have direct taps onto their watering systems for their livestock.
Okay, some of them do, but
And that's what we're referring to, is those individuals that are tied onto the pipeline system for watering of livestock.
so what about the people who don't have that system?
They're probably using dugouts, and they're probably using wells or different. I know for myself, we had a water license for a well when we had cattle, and we had water allocations for our own purpose, right?
I still find it hard to justify not watering your livestock, but keeping the car wash and a pool and a splash park open.
We're looking after the interests of our community, which is our business taxpayers and the residents of High Prairie. Most livestock people do not haul treated water. They do not use treated water to water their livestock. There's very few that I know of or am aware of that are actually using that system. So that's why that was included from our discussions.
So have you surveyed to see how many actually do haul for their livestock?
At the truck fill here. And with that being, we have not, But with that being, they do have an alternative to haul from Jussard, Breward, Peavine, McLennan, or Valley View to haul. If they're actually using our truck fill to haul, there's other alternatives for them to haul to their livestock. Of which two for sure would not be in the same situation at that point as we are, because they draw from the lake, which is the biggest freshwater reservoir in all of Alberta. And from the meeting at the end of January, Megan Payne stated that all the water users on there right now, with all their allocations, would only over a year, would only drop it by 2 inches.
And another thing I've noticed here is, you have, household and multifamily dwellings, apartments. How does Heart River Housing fit in there?
Heart River Housing, with their units, it's per unit. So if they have one master meter, it would be broken down by the amount of units in that building. And that's what they're allocated. So if it was, say, 15 cubes and there was 2 units in there, they'd be allowed 30.
Anything else? I know, the CAO had some dad in there.
So just through the chair again, it's not that we're trying to be callous in here and we're not trying to be good neighbors. But at the end of the day, unlike other jurisdictions, which the minister has already addressed, other regions have already entered into license drawing rearrangements. If these factors hit, here's who's going to take the hit in other regions. We are not on a regional water system. Basically, we are supplying some county residents, some water co-ops, but we're basically a self-contained system. No one's going to come to the town of High Prairie and say, we'd like to share your capacity, because it's just too prohibitive to truck anywhere to be shared. Unlike other regions where they're on a large river, they all have water licensing arrangements, and the minister and those municipalities have been very proactive and agreed if the triggers go down here, we are giving up allocations. We're not saying that here because we're not, it's a different model altogether in terms of the situation in High Prairie. So, don't take it that we're trying to be callous to our neighbors. It's just the risk of our neighbors coming looking for additional allocations. We don't perceive that happening.
Okay. Other questions, comments on this? Councilor Wakefield?
It's not really, it's water, but it's not really this. There was that other group, that other co-op that wanted to tie in. Have we heard from them at all?
We are supposed to have a meeting with them on April 30th. That's where there is discussions about securing our raw water. If we were to participate with that, where it would become a shared cost instead of the town having to go it alone. If the town chose to go and the funding was available to go to the lake as a raw water source.
Anything more there, James? No. Councilor Stenhouse?
Yeah, the one that he's referring to that we seen in December, that is to go to a regional system? I thought they wanted to tap into our system.
They want to go to tap into our system and be us as the supplier. But the discussions were, when we talked with them, that we would need to secure raw water supply and that they would need to participate in the costs.
Okay, others? Okay.
So there has been, again, through the chair, a few suggestions that learned, even with the low flow pump, how many cubic meters an hour would that produce roughly?
We would still produce about 9. I'm not that quick. We produce about 2.5 a minute.
Right. So in an hour, even with the low flow, that is about.
With the low flow, we would still, not a minute, a second, 2. We would still be able to produce water and supply water to the reservoir with the low flow pump. We produce about 400,000 gallons a day.
Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is, you know, if you want to cut the flower plots, that's great. You know, we're on the hook for 90% of the cost because, you know, they were told to plant them in February, so they're planted. So we're responsible for certain costs. So at the end of the day, we're looking at, you know, the amount of water we'll be using for that activity. We've cut the flower hanging baskets by 50% already. We cannot plant in any of the boxes per se. The bigger issues are like beautification. That will use more water than the hanging baskets. So those are the decisions we need to communicate to the groups sooner than later. And again, in the overall scheme of things, those activities, other than the optics of people in town saying they're still watering the plants, the volumes there for the hanging baskets, we're talking about, you know, 62 cubes of water for the season. It's not going to have any impact going from stage 1 to stage 2. Like it's so minor, but it's good optics. But again, for council's information, there's still going to be a out-of-pocket cost, and the amount of water that's going to be used is minuscule in terms of the big picture. If we can get some of the bigger users, which we're targeting right now, and saying what they're going to be doing for activities, if they have to restrict their water intake, that will be a bigger challenge because that would probably mean that's going to affect employment levels. Yet, the major industries in town, if they have to cut down their water utilization.
Okay, yeah, I have, I guess, a bunch of questions around this, because when we talk about the big water users, if I remember right, the water users that we have, some of the big industries would be West Fraser would be a big user. The car washes was a big user. Some of the hotels and the hospitals were big users, right? Those were
those are the heavy hitters.
The heavy hitters, yeah.
Schools.
The pool, schools. So I guess I'm really looking at, you know, we need to talk with those big industry users to make sure and see where they're at and can they, because that's going to have major implications on what they can do, what they can't do if we get to those levels. And something like what Donna was talking about, having that sort of that open house to have those discussions in some way, shape, or form is really important. So we know what. Well, I guess both get their input because it's there's a lot of money on the line with them, but also they might have some other solutions too that might help and that we could look at. So I would really like. I like that idea of doing sort of a town hall meeting and inviting the major water users in to say, hey, you know, this is what we're thinking of. This is where we're sort of landing. What do you guys think? What are some other solutions? How can we work this out? And the same thing a little bit with our county water users. Yes, I know that, you know, the priority should be some of our town residents, but at the same time, it's a pretty artificial line between the town and the county. And if you happen to live, just on the other side of this road, all of a sudden you don't get water, but that's your only source of water because you've been on, you've been getting water off of that forever, and you don't have another source, how are they gonna get water, right? Like I'm going, ooh, when I lived in the county, if I lost that town water, it could have been really problematic, right? So I worry about that too, and saying, yes, to just say, you're totally cut off. I don't like that, I mean, definitely, everybody should be reduced, and everybody should pay, but just to cut off the county people, for me, doesn't fit. And knowing what the impacts with the industry are, would be my other big one. The other thing I was just thinking about is how do we enforce some of these things? Like we're just talking about the cattle and watering. How would we know if they were watering their cattle, and how could we control that?
Would have to be by investigation or a site visit. We have been in discussions with the operations staff at the county in regards to some of this stuff. They've actually approached us already, finding out what our situation was for this year. I've been here 37 years, and I'm not saying that this isn't coming, but we have never, even last year when we were supposedly running out of water, would have reached a stage 1. And that's not pumping from the end of August till we put the pump in April last year. These are extreme circumstances that we when we sat down and talked about it, these would be extreme circumstances. Also depending upon the time of the year. If we're hitting a 15-foot level in the reservoir and we got a 6-foot snowpack south of town and it's April, we don't have an issue because we'll refill, right? I'm not saying that this is not coming. This is to protect the interests of the town of Highbury if it does come.
This is worst case scenario.
No, I get it.
Yeah, but we're close,
But,
we're close.
And so when it was full in the fall.
Yeah.
And then this spring, before we started pumping, what level were we at?
21 feet.
21 feet. So we've come up a foot since then, since we started pumping.
We had talked and used a bit of that freeboard last November when the river was still running.
Okay.
And if council went by the river, they seen that pump in the river in about the 10th of November, and it come out on the 15th. There was still enough water flowing in that river at that point to supply that big pump. So when we put it in the 10th, we were proactive in getting it in early because of the snowpack wasn't there. And like I said, we've got at least another week for sure with what's flowing there. And we probably will get the 3 weeks that we need, and we will be completely full. So unless we don't get any more moisture till November, we're still good for 12 months. That was in the 1980s when that was designed. That was designed very well for the community, right? It's just now with all the additions on, because Highbury really hasn't expanded that much. We have been increased our usage within the boundaries of town, but it's the co-ops that have expanded and added on. They take about 2.5 million gallons a month of our water, or 20% of what we produce per month.
If I could just through the chair, in terms of the enforcement issues, well, we can't enforce anything right now because we don't have a bylaw.
Yeah.
That makes it enforceable. But Ernst mentioned, the superintendent of public works has mentioned a couple measures, but the main metrics would be through your billing every month to determine whether you're, violating the bylaw per se. We would supplement that with various testing and sampling and inspections, but that's the general process of saying who the offenders are out there, per se.
So when the forest fires were on and the fire trucks filled up, how much did that affect our water?
Perhaps I can.
I can take that. For our water here, we were already pumping at the reservoir. Our reservoirs within town were starting to drop because we lost power at the airport to provide us the appropriate flows to produce. And council this year has approved the generator for out there and improvements out there that would eliminate that scenario. The biggest thing that we have for the town of High Prairie, because even our water treatment plant has redundancy built within it. There's 2 clarifiers there. Each one is capable of producing about 25 liters a second. So if one of those clarifiers go down, the other one is producing still. And we have taken them out of service and serviced them, and then started them back up and then pulled the opposite one out of service. And we still produce enough water to supply. The reservoir that the fire trucks emptied was not our reservoir. It was Riverbend's reservoir, south of the airport, and it would belong to the county. And that was a supply issue coming from the line to keep refilling that reservoir, not our reservoirs in town.
So again, through the chair, just supplemental to that. As part of the emergency management plan, the chief has already implemented a strategy not to use treated water. So there's certain dugouts that have been identified. We're reinstating the gravel roads to those, and he will be pulling untreated water for fire suppression much more than he ever has in the past. That will again reduce the reliance on draws from the raw water supply or the treated water source in town. So certain aspects, if you go by Railway Avenue, just that way, there's an old entrance to the stream there that's being reinstated by Public Works staff, and he'll be using that as a site location in town to draw water directly from that source, not from our source for our water intake.
In extreme situations, as long as that river pump is pumping, there is a 4-inch outlet right at the pump house by the river. So as long as that pump is running there, he can utilize that, and we've mentioned it to him that that is available to him.
Okay, lots of good discussion around this one. You guys are lots of thought going into this, but the other thing I was like where you started with level 1 at 17.6 feet. I guess I'm just wondering, how did that number come in? And, for just how was that determined?
Basically on our production, if you look at stage 1, we're looking to reduce our production by 10% at stage 1. And then the next stage volume was based upon reducing production 20%. And that's how those levels were determined. And based upon historical lows, like last year, we wouldn't even reach to stage 1 as to where we were at with raw water supply. And that's the worst year I've ever seen that reservoir at, was last year.
So last year, the lowest it got to was how many feet?
Just above 60.
Just above what?
60. So I guess we would have been just thinking about, but then we were coming into April, and that all depends on the time of the year as to when you would even consider implementing these stages. Because of the snow, if you got good snowpack, you know that you don't need to implement it because you're gonna fill. Yeah. Right? So I think it was at 16 and a quarter feet, like 16.25 or something like that. Roughly.
And that was last spring.
Last spring
was the lowest at
the
16.
worst I've ever seen it.
So last year at this time, we might have been looking at level 1 kind of.
To start, yeah. But even at that, we were pumping already.
Yeah.
So,
It wasn't continuing.
well, it was, yeah, it was later on that it would have become a concern had we not been able to continue pumping. There's a lot of factors that are gonna have to go into this when the decision is finally made to even implement a stage 1. And that's based upon the timing of the year, snowpack in the hills. There's a lot of things to consider before you would go to a stage 1. And with the stage 5, worst case, we need to keep the hospital. That's one of the biggest, and emergency services supply. And that's why the stage 5, everybody is pretty much. Right?
Councilor Martins?
Either to the CAO or the, what's an average household's cubic meter consumption of water?
About 400 liters per day per household, or per person in that household. That's what the basis is, when you do through, say, our training courses and stuff like that.
So what does that work out to be cubic meters for, is this a month? This is a month, right? What is this? Yeah, so what does that work out to be roughly a month on average?
Well, just a second here. About 20, the basis would be about 20 cubes a month for a household of 4.
And the number we usually use is pretty well that, it's like 230 cubes a year for the typical household, right?
Yeah. And it all depends on the type of household too, like if you have 4 adults in there, they're probably gonna shower. Our younger kids are gonna bath, and the bath uses more water than a shower does, and those types of things, right?
So there are all kinds of other measures in terms of assisting water conservation. We haven't brought them forward to tonight, because as I mentioned before, we're trying to get something to council, we got something to council. Now, the next set of measures are, would council be interested in entertaining subsidizing rain barrels, subsidizing other conservation measures? There are grant programs that do that in terms of retrofitting their house, but there are some simple ideas that could, rain barrels, for instance, you get a really good rain barrel for $100. The council will want to subsidize it to support this initiative. So we can bring back all kinds of initiatives like that, but it will mean the town is cross-subsidizing residents to conserve water, but there's going to be a cost, and who bears the cost if we're all in this together?
The other thing that, for me, that is alternate sources. I read in the RFD that they were looking into alternate sources. Where are we at other than, I mean, I know the big goal was maybe getting out to, the lake, but what are other options of getting water here?
One other option being looked at right now is building a weir in the West Prairie River that would basically back water up at a certain level to satisfy the filling of that reservoir every year.
Yeah, and that one is, where are we at with that? I know we were.
We're just looking at them now. We've got a ton of things to look at, and we'd like to have partners when we look at these things, because then the cost is that much less. But ultimately, in the end, the lake is the most secure supply for anybody in this province.
What lake are you referring?
Lesser Slave. That is the biggest lake contained solely in Alberta. I know Lake Athabasca is bigger, but it's half in Saskatchewan, half in Alberta.
No, I thought you were either Winagami or.
No, Winagami is not really the option. There's not that many tributaries flowing into Winagami, and then you've got the Heart River that's flowing out of it.
Yeah, and I would believe the ministry would be very unsupportive of it because of the flows. It just doesn't have the flows to support sustainability in the long run, right? So.
There's a lot of discussions that have to happen prior to finding another source, and a lot of approvals that you gotta get before another source would be viable at this time.
Yeah, I guess, you know what, I know that there was, some water lines, above ground water lines that the oil companies, I believe it was them running across land and pumping and.
That was the town of Valley View.
Oh, was that the town of Valley View? Okay, and, you know, is there options like that if we need it? And why did Valley View have what happened there? I'm not.
Because they don't have the size of the raw water storage reservoir that we have.
Okay.
They've only got a couple of months supply, and as far as I know, that they can store off-site of the Little Smoky River. Like I say, the design of this in the 1980s was foresight to the future.
Yeah, kudos to them. At least we got a big reservoir, which is great.
So if I could just add through the chair, that issue of doing overland lines is still very preliminary, but we're pursuing that with the county to do overland lines, but that's, we're planning for it now, and hopefully we don't have to implement it. So again, you know, the intent of this document is more of a planning document, not an action document. So we need to plan. These are the triggers we're recommending to council based on flows. Let's get the plan in order. There'll be lots of time to implement it, but we need to get things moving for the planning stages are there. If that involves more community consultation, more input, that's great. But we need to move forward with our contingency planning.
Okay, so
We do have,
what's that?
we do have a motion.
Yeah, we do have a motion.
And that is that motion, essentially.
Sorry?
And that is that motion, essentially.
Approve the water restrictions and triggers in principle and direct administration to prepare the necessary bylaw amendments. For me, this is just me thinking, before we go to bylaw amendments, I'd like to get some more input. Like, we've got a general principle, but I would like to hear from others and other ideas before we put it into a bylaw. That would be my thinking. But, and I'm also glad to hear we're sitting pretty good and should be just fine for the next one.
Well, I mean, this is just preparing the necessary bylaw amendments. This isn't implementing them at all.
No.
Right? So this is just getting ready for that. I think, just a question for administration, would it be prudent at this point to add to this motion, community consultation and community engagement? I think that if we're gonna do something as drastic as this, that there's gonna be some hard questions that need to be answered. So I would like to add, to this, that a date for community engagement on this matter, be scheduled.
Okay, well, it was your motion. So we.
Well, that's why I added to it.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Did you get that, Tim?
Okay, is there any other any other thoughts before we vote on that?
So it says administration to prepare the necessary bylaw amendments. Would those amendments come back to council?
Yes.
They have to.
Yeah, I think
That's all I
It's
need to know.
rereading,
So
right?
basically, that's what it's saying, it's not, so that's still gonna come back to us, so.
But we don't wanna
Right.
waste their time if we're
No.
not happy with the direction.
Yeah.
We gotta make sure we're heading in the right direction before they prepare anything.
So if I could, through the chair, it would be, if you look at the chart called water restriction stages, we have a community engagement to explain what each of those stages would be, what's driving those stages, what the implications are, and the like. And then that would gather information, which would inform potentially the amendments to the bylaw. And that would be brought back to council for deliberations.
Perfect. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Oh, Councilor Martin.
So you mentioned getting input, so is that before the amendments, before we waste administration's time, and you mentioned inputs from which stakeholders?
That would be all the ratepayers in town.
No, the mayor mentioned, that, maybe you talking about public.
Well, yeah, the public and businesses and industry, absolutely. And they might be the same meeting, or they might be two different meetings, but, and we need to get input from industry, so especially some of the big users, and get some input from them too. And the regular rate users.
I need clarity on that, before you go and do up the amendments, or you're gonna go ahead and do the amendments and then have the open house?
No.
No, it would be, get some feedback, then we got the direction, they can prepare the bylaw, and then that would come back to council.
So, yeah, just through the chair again for greater clarity, there's nothing in our existing bylaw that allows any restrictions in terms of water utilization. So by amendments, we're not really amending anything, we'd be introducing potential changes related to water restriction within the bylaw. But before doing that, we would do a public information session, industry consultation, and the like. To give you an idea, council probably wasn't aware that the fire chief amended his practice in terms of drawing water, not from a potable supply, from another supply. Industry may be doing things that the town's unaware of that may cut, and they may be acting independently. Just like the town's acting independently. I mentioned we're implementing low flow water baskets and the like. So there's managers have all been tasked to say, look at your operations, what are your biggest water usages, and what can we do to effectively reuse some of the water? You know, in the pool, we've got a recycling system. Well, there may be other opportunities in other areas in the town that we can look at to reduce water flows, period, or water usage, period. So, you know, this is a working process, and it's a working process.
So by voting for this motion, we are not actually, are we accepting this table, or we are?
We are accepting this table to take to industry and the public to get some feedback on, and then based on that, we would finalize the table afterwards. All right, any other thoughts on this before we vote? Okay.
So
All,
can we reread that one more time?
council approve the water restriction measures and triggers in principle and direct administration to prepare the necessary bylaw amendments and for administration to schedule a, what's the word?
Public input,
Yeah,
public input
Public-
sessions.
public input sessions,
Yeah, and that would include the public and business input.
public business.
All right, all in favor? Carried. Let's take a break and